You're right. Happy New Year. It's been a few weeks, right? We had a little hiatus last week.
It has. Feel like it's been forever.
Right. Well, blessings to you, and I'm happy that you're having a good New Year. A big, beautiful smile on your face. Say our names now. Let's get to it. Today, what will we talk about mostly today? We're gonna go over that really shortly.
Yes, so today we're going to be talking about, we talk about the criminal justice system and what that system is, and we talk about laws and we talk about policy, but a lot of times we don't talk about what the impact of the criminal justice system, what that looks like on our local communities. I mean, we live day to day in high tense situations. Some of us live in high crime, neighborhoods. We live in realities where drugs and crime is a big part of, some people's day to day. So today we're going to be talking about, preventative measures that we can be using, strategies, techniques, but just also some information to keep in mind, resources to keep in mind so that we as a community can be choosing, how we move towards justice and not just be the recipients of people trying to bring us justice.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning. Because you just said a whole lot there, and which is covering a lot. Let's start from the top. Like, how does the role of police in the criminal justice system as the initiator? So, from the top, what is community policing, first of all? Because we were talking off the air, and you were saying how different parts of Florida, they got a whole different approach here. So, just to establish, what is community policing?
So community policing, there's different strategies, techniques, but community policing is exactly what it sounds like, having a policing system that includes or centers the community in that policing. For a lot of people right now locally in Gainesville, when you ask, does community and police work hand in hand, side by side? Do we have models of community justice? Most people would say, absolutely not. And so
I'd be one of those people. So when I hear community policing, are you saying that the community is taking the role of the police? Are they the police? Reconcile that for me.
So first of all, when we think about it, police typically either show up to our communities when we call them,
right?
Or we live in communities where they're just hanging around, or they're stationed around us, ready to respond or ready to lean into situations. Community policing could look like transformative justice, which we see models of that down south. Dream Defenders also is very big in transformative justice, where community solves its own conflicts without actually calling police.
What do you know? That actually works, right?
And it was scary the first time I heard about it, but there are, it may not work. It's just like restorative justice. It may not be for every situation, but a lot of, the conflicts, a lot of the issues that we're seeing in community, instead of calling police in, which can a lot of times make it worse, you have community organizers, people who live in these communities who are trained in conflict resolution and who can resolve conflict without police.
I was being sarcastic there. For most of our existence, we exist and resolved our conflicts communally. You know what I mean? We didn't have this fallacy of a force that would come in and reconcile a lot of mundane, just human conflict. A lot of times that. A lot of times we can handle we can find a resolution. A lot of times we just dialogue. But ain't that crazy? But let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about improper arrest, illegal search and seizure, profiling, neighborhood stalking. How does that play a role in community policing, the criminal justice system, and so on?
Because we have more power, than we recognize as communities, as families, as members of, this state. And so for a police chief, it's our mayor who deals with appoints the police, who, makes a lot of decisions around that funding. And so we elect, our mayor. Mayor Polk right here in Gainesville, Florida is not someone that is far away from our reach. So when we're a part of the decision making, participatory budgeting, we see in some states where community members actually are a part of the decision making of how the police budget is used and how that money's allocated in our communities on diversion, on prevention. And so, showing up, participatory defense, making sure that we understand what police are doing when they're in our communities, but also making sure that we're part of those laws and policies that govern these police and sheriff departments.
So what is neighborhood stalking? What is that?
So to me, neighborhood stalking is like when I go out west and then you hit that left turn, you know what I'm saying, on University Avenue, which goes into Cedar Ridge.
Oh, right by Sparrow.
8 police officers
always
already
there.
lined up.
They're already there.
You hit that back curve in the back of, Sugarfoot, or like you feel like a dart, you know what I'm saying, on Tower Road, and that's when you just have mobs of police that are just sitting, not interacting, taking up space and causing fear.
Right. Almost like very intimidating.
It is.
My mother used to have like an analogy where she would liken the police just sitting there stalking to lions when they like kind of stalk the gazelles, the scores of gazelles or whatever, to find a little weak one. She
like
always
crows.
says that. Yeah, she always said that.
Around waiting for like trouble and
right.
death and doom. That's what it feels like.
Wow.
Like crows,
vultures.
Yeah, vultures.
That's wild. That's crazy. All right. Go into. I glossed over it, but I want you to go into this too. Improper arrest, illegal search, and seizure, profiling. Kind of go into that for me a little bit, please.
I mean, profiling, and we hear about that, and a lot of times it's watered down, or we hear about things, and so we get desensitized. But there's a lot of people who we see them get arrested, but don't get charged because it's called the fruit of the poisonous tree, where you may got arrested because the police alleged that you looked like somebody, you was doing something that you actually didn't look like. How do you fit the description of somebody way outside of your character?
Right.
Or just because I'm on the west side of town going into Cedar Ridge doesn't mean, that I'm actually back there to commit crimes. And so it's a lot of stuff that happens that we don't recognize that is not, right. And so arrests, as well as when a police officer assumes or, is assuming that you committed a crime, there's procedures and rules to that.
It's amazing, man. So, we have a unfortunate trend or history of calling the cops a lot of times unnecessarily. Talk a little bit about calling 911 and using the police for parenting and conflict resolution.
Yes, which I'm guilty. I'm so guilty, and sometimes you can't really speak on something until you go through it.
Right.
And so I can honestly say anything I speak on is because I go through it. But I have to also say we've seen a lot. I've seen 4 issues more recently in Alachua County of people getting accused of crimes that they did not commit. And the courts don't come back after people are found, not guilty and apologize. But I've seen people being really accused lately. But we see it. I got a 16-year-old son that's like manning up. We see a lot of mamas call police, on our kids when they turned up, when they talking back. A lot of single parents, having to use police, to govern like what's going on in house.
Yeah, as a disciplinary measure.
As a disciplinary, because there's no dad around, or because a lot of times the kids don't have fear. And so we use that fear of police or even domestic violence. I've had the police call on me twice.
Right. Talk about how does domestic violence play into that?
So, let's just be real. We got a lot of undiagnosed mental health.
Right.
Also, trauma, PTSD. We're traumatized inside of our communities. And
absolutely.
When you add on drug use, when you add on alcohol, when you add on just even emotional.
Yeah, passion.
Right? You got a lot of raw people rubbing up against each other. I'm a strong female. So I'm not messing with no, weak men. So we get into a heated argument. I'm not about to back
Right. You
down.
don't seem like you would.
I'm not going to. And so, like, sometimes, and this being real, we push ourselves, or you have neighbors calling police, or you have sometimes girlfriend calling police just because he drunk. I want him to calm down. Or you got dude calling police because she ain't gonna turn down.
Right. And then what ends up happening is when the cops get there, they're coming in to arrest somebody. Like, they don't care that you care about that person. You know what I mean? They coming to,
Me and my ex did that too. They get that now. I'm not telling. He not telling.
Right.
We know how to not share information. But at the same time, every time I had to tell my son, even though there was no arrest, our names getting written down.
Oh yeah.
Our birth dates are getting written down, as well as we're making, those stereotypes of these people. They cause problems, and so it causes a big ripple effect.
Yeah, it does, and then that can even affect how. How the cops view us affects how they perform.
Absolutely.
So I see where you're going there. What is transformative justice?
So transformative justice is an alternative way to solve injustice issues. Like restorative justice looks at how can we resolve conflict within the justice system, right. Using dialogue to come up with more restorative agreements and contracts between people who commit crime and people who are victims of crime. But transformative justice is, outside of that system. And so it looks like if there was a fight in the neighborhood, a lot of times we don't call police, for general issues that go on in our neighborhood. Instead of that conflict just going unresolved. Again, there's elders in communities or just, self-appointed, community-appointed people who would, instead of just letting our beef ride, bring our people together, work with both sides to see, like, what does both people need, build a team around those people, and then, like, really negotiate, like, how can we make this right? A lot of times people, get into situations and they don't want to be done with each other. Right. So how do, me and you still stay in a relationship even though we just got through beating up on each other yesterday? Or how do me and my mom stay in a relationship after mom just committed, a crime against me?
Understood.
So, alternatives.
What's the first step? What's the first step in kind of from just a regular community member? What's the first step here to in the right direction?
So the first step in the right direction is, first of all, getting to know your community. If you're going to have a community alternative or a community strategy, it has to be adopted, right, by the entire community.
Understood.
And so we a lot of times have these informal practices, like you don't tell, or we just have these informal beliefs, but it's time for us to start having collective beliefs and knowing that auntie over here or mom or sister or Miss Candace in this apartment, she's there for conflict resolution. We typically do it, like on the low. Call me, you and your old man going through it, like,
right.
Being there for one another and not looking at those strategies as weak or downplaying the fact that we are counselors, we are healers, we are prayers, with conflict resolution. Peace builders.
That's interesting. I'd like to see that executed. I definitely would like to see how men would approach this.
Because we need it. It's sad.
I do. I agree. I think that with men, we have a hard time sometimes, following leaders. We're very critical on who we follow. So, but, I personally feel like you can receive wisdom from anyone. So,
but it's the environment.
Right. And we gotta figure out how to make it more conducive and more, I think, welcoming for all. Because that's where I think we trip up a lot. Men deal with pride. That's one of our big things is that we deal with pride. So, that's what I think. That's more of a brotherhood type situation where we just have to
show up first of all, you got to be strong enough to make that call.
Right.
Because it might not be meeting up at a church, meeting up at this place. When I'm comfortable, I'm in my home, in my neighborhood, like, this got to be responsive.
Yeah.
You know, when bro going through it, like, bro need brothers that's going to show up and going to be able to sit until bro ready to talk,
Right.
you know.
And I like that. You might not have to be a church. You just go get some wings or something.
You know what I'm saying?
You can,
or don't do nothing. Show out in the backyard.
Right.
Show out in the parking lot if you need to. But like,
I agree.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect segue to the next topic, which would be the role of neighborhood in criminal justice.
Yeah.
Start off talking a little bit about mental health versus trauma. And just the social work and the law and etc.
Yes. So we probably don't recognize it on the community level, but there's been a big connection and joining of hands between social work and criminal justice. Even right now in our public defender's office, our public defender, Stacey Scott in Gainesville, is adopting the Bronx Defenders model where you have a wraparound service when a person comes into the PD's office. And so we do have a social worker, Elise, that's supposed to complement the lawyer. Even mental health, Meridian, I mean, Alachua County spent tons of money on having social workers, you know, ride along with police officers. And so recognizing that our mental state, you know, is a huge part of action and behavior. But mental health is, you know, an imbalance, you know, something out of your control. You know, somebody may have a mental imbalance or a mental, you know, issue or handicap, but then there's also trauma. You know, I don't have any mental, you know, deficiencies, but do I have a lot of trauma? Yes. Am I afraid of police? Absolutely. Am I uncomfortable in certain situations? Absolutely. Am I, you know, institutionalized? Absolutely. And so anytime that you're going through experiences, ACEs is a huge thing. The adverse childhood experiences, the experience that you go through as a child, they shape how you know, guard yourself, protect yourself as an adult. And so a lot of times we don't have that conversations in our communities. And a lot of times mental health goes undiagnosed and we play down, you know, those insecurities, that paranoia. I'm very paranoia. Like I've had to learn how to embrace though. Like I don't like to be around a lot of people. I do not like to have like a lot of, you know, conversation. Like I get anxiety when my phone rings too much. And so like those are real things, and a lot of people don't have the tools.
And they come from somewhere.
It comes from somewhere.
Right. I mean that's one of the things I think that most people they don't want to talk about these issues because they feel like they're an anomaly. You know, they feel like they're in it alone. They feel like, you know, nobody else feels like this but me. And a lot of times that makes it so hard to talk about. But once you do talk about these things, you find that, you know, there's comfort in, you know, having somebody, you know, in relation and somebody being able to relate to what you're going through.
I got free that way. That has been the biggest reward for my career over the last 3 years is I spoke truth on every platform. You know, even if I was afraid, I told a little bit of, you know, the truth, but like I've spoken truth, and the more and more I share what I'm ashamed of, what I'm afraid of, you know, what hurts, what's weak, what I'm not going to tolerate, you know, the more I embrace who I am, the more relieved I am, the more I'm able to, when it's not like on me and I can bring it in my hands, then I can share it with other people to help, or I can deal with it. So
that's real.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that's plagued our community for decades. Some would say advertently, you know, from external forces. Substance abuse and how this plays into the entire topic here.
Yes, it's amazing to me. It just seems like yesterday, you know, starting to work in this world above, you know, the world that I've lived in, and to recognize how, like, wow, we talk about ACE scores, you know, and average childhood trauma and risk factors. But like the average little person in a black neighborhood, you know, goes through 15 times, you know, what the average PTSD person or, person would go through. And when you get to thinking about emotions, like, it doesn't matter if I punch you in the face, or if I curse you out, you may feel the punch or you may hear the words, but ultimately your brain, right, has the same impact. And so with substance abuse, that's a resource in a lot of our communities. It's criminalized in the larger world, but like for some folks, like smoking a blunt, you know what I'm saying? I look at Molly, it's cheap, is actually something that's gonna alter, somebody's mood. It's gonna be something that gives somebody, peace. And so addiction is real, and so we see this cycle of resources. It's easier to get Molly, to get weed. It's easier to, probably get beans, to get pills. It's easier to be in these lower vibrations because there's nothing else,
right,
for people to get involved in.
So,
but it's criminalized.
Right.
It's criminalized. So to go get help, you at risk of being judged, first of all, of being arrested, for possession. We have harsh possession laws. 4 grams is trafficking. It's not like you got to be carrying big kilos across states anymore. If you got more than 4 grams possession,
That's
you
trafficking.
can get some mandatory, time. And so it's this ripple effect. But it's a resource and it's a tool.
Yeah, and I think another big issue is historically, it's not even the justice system isn't even administered equally. You know what I mean? So not only are we judged for this, we're given a very harsh time for this.
And we don't know about it. I just found out that white people did drugs like 4 years ago when I moved back to Kansas.
That's crazy.
I promise that someone was saying that, accusing me of doing drugs, and so at some point white people was like, we heard you smoke weed, and I was like terrified, like ashamed, like repent myself to the Lord, like quit. I gotta quit smoking, and then come to find out, so many white people like, I smoke weed. Even like seeing the amount of students that do cocaine, do pills, like to see like drug use. And so there's also this, I guess, stereotype that only like black folks doing drugs. But a lot of people in Gainesville, a lot of successful people, a lot of wealthy people, it's not just.
Well, the United States consumes the most drugs than any other country in the world. I mean, that's just a fact. That's something that's not just me talking. That's a fact of life. And I mean, demographically, this country is a majority white country. So I think that kind of resolves that mystery.
I get that sometimes.
Well, the thing is, what I always talk about is I mention people like Pablo Escobar, like Big Meech, like El Chapo, all these big drug lords. And the one thing they all have in common is America was their market. That's how they get filthy rich. So, I mean, so it's because this is the place to sell drugs because this is the place where people use drugs. I mean, we use the most drugs and we put people in jail the most, as you probably know that. Let's move on to, this is another awesome segue to what we're going to talk about next, which is culture, race, and identity. And the us versus them subject, topic, mentality. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yes. And so it has been watching Gainesville, especially white Gainesville, and a lot of the professional black Gainesville has been doing race work, right, for some years now.
Race work.
Okay. Looking at racial
equity and all that kind of stuff.
Diversity. And so with race, we look at our skin color and we see the same people. There's a black people, and then we don't recognize that culturally. Black people are different. We see these cultural differences between age, between religion, between, I call it criminalization. The hip hop culture, I'm hip hop culture. Like, that's my culture, also my identity, Southern, You know, now that I've traveled, you know, I recognize like why, like when I walk in the room, folks know like Florida in the room.
Yeah.
You know, and
like y'all don't eat potato salad.
You see what I'm saying? Or grits.
Yeah. Y'all eat grits.
From Alabama, I was in California. We had breakfast. It was no grits. My homegirl from Alabama had grits in her bag. She brought and went into the bag and fixed some grits.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's my identity is to, you know, be hip hop, to, you know, I love me some mulatto, you know.
Nice.
So like Southern rich bitch, like that's my identity.
Okay.
You know, and so
shout out to mulatto.
And big shout out to mulatto.
You like mulatto?
I love mulatto. I can't lie. I love me some Remy, love me some mulatto. So
okay.
It is a huge difference, and we're not talking about it. And I always say you can't teach cultural diversity. Unless you got a relationship with me, unless you get to know me, unless you got that vibe with me, I'm never going to, you know, share who I am. We just interact on these, you know, very
on the surface,
limited surface. You know, in RPCP we call it the iceberg of human complexity. You know, 85% of the iceberg is under the water. You don't see it. You only typically see about 15%. And that's what we see day to day with people through our actions and behaviors. And so
that's brilliant.
Too many people making decisions based off race, and they have no idea of the difference and diversity of culture that lives in Alachua County and just all over, as well as my identity. And until you come up to me and you ask me who I am, and until I can confidently look a man or a woman power in the eye and, you know, hands down declare who I am, that is when identity, you know, and how we form identity. And so
I'm loving that, man. Talk a little bit about as a community, our relationship with and how we should respond to unreported crime.
And so that's where the intersection between race, identity, and culture gets conflicted. You know, I've had the amazing honor of working in Village and Forest Green when I worked at RPCP in 2018. And although it was a lot of black people stay out there, it was a lot of different cultures. There were even some people of Haitian culture, you know, out there, and I would just see, like, sometimes the just plain out disrespect that would happen between us because of the lack of knowledge, you know, of who we were and what respect is. That's social emotional learning.
Talk about the difference between lack of knowledge and what a lot of people might call just ignorance.
Unawareness. So
talk about
ignorance
that.
Is when I just don't want to learn. I don't care.
Right.
And like we gotta recognize that. And I learned about that at Project Youth Build. When I went into Project Youth Build the first time in 2018, and to me that's fine. That's black leadership right there. That's the future black leaders of Gainesville at Project Youth Build. But you know, that respect, it came without, you know, words. And so like when I have respect for you, you know, I'm going to listen. If I notice, like, hey, Jhody don't like to, you know, she like to be in clean areas, I'm going to pick up. Even though I might like my stuff everywhere, I'm going to pick up, you know what I'm saying, when she come around, out of respect. And so ignorance is when you just don't care, you ain't paying attention, and you're not willing to make room for anybody else, you know. But that awareness comes from, you ain't got to take no class. You know, just pay attention. You respect the vibe. You're watching, you know. And so a lot of times in our neighborhoods and communities, we do this. It's safe to keep our heads down, our ears closed. That's who the hell even taught us that, right? Who taught us that? Keep your head down, keep your mouth closed. It's safe to not be seen. And what that does is not only does then things happen, and then I'm the one that typically gets called, right, after the crime is committed. And although there's a whole community that if would show up, it would have stopped this person from getting 15 years. This person gets prosecuted quietly, silently, you know, in a courtroom. However, we also prosecute each other, you know, when we walk around like that. Men don't get seen. Women don't get seen. Children are not getting seen. Our elderly, our, you know, community are not getting seen because we walking around like this, and like this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about the general relationship between people and the police.
I mean, stay away. You got folks that I feel like there's people who are trying to prescribe to the national movement. You know, it's right now, it's important for police to stand next to people and say, we're in relationship. So you're going to have those people that, you know, for the importance of showing that relationship, are going to stand there.
Like appearances. You
know, appearances. If we appear, right, if it appears good, then people will assume it's good, which I can prove because right now, crime rate has actually been, like, low nationally. If you look at the statistics for, like, the last few years, who actually commits crime, like, these statistics are not even what we believe, but when people were surveyed as to crime rate rising and who's committing crime and who's not safe, like, those beliefs, you know, were still off the charts. And so a lot of times we have, you know, people just showing up. And then we have people that just don't care. My world consists of what I'm thinking about. And most people ain't thinking about no police, or I'm only thinking about them when I know the target areas, right? When they're neighborhood stalking, I already know. And so, like, my body is, I respond to out west the way I respond to, like, my morning routine, you know? But then there's some people who are thinking about, like, my kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got a black son. I got a brother in the system. I got a brother trying to get out of the system. I can't help but think about my relationship with, you know, police. Right. And so we're at different, and I don't think either one is wrong. I just think, again, we're not acknowledging, you know, the power of the people, and we're putting too much emphasis in eyesight and hindsight on the police itself.
Nice. What's civil injustice?
So a lot of times people talk about criminal injustice. The criminal justice system is a symptom of a problem. It's not the problem. When people, I can't stand collateral consequences says that when a person becomes formally incarcerated, you get this stigma. Felony is a lifetime, right? A mark on you. And so because I'm a felon, I have negative impacts on where I can live, what type of employment I can get, you know, all types of stuff, right? But that stuff ain't just for formerly incarcerated people. Like, I was black before I was formerly incarcerated.
That's real.
My mama had them same issues, and she wasn't incarcerated. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you're on housing,
it has to be a larger issue.
It's a larger issue. School. I feel like it's jail, prison, sending my babies to school, first of all, because what other option is there? You know what I'm saying? You teach them yourself, and then you can't teach them what they need to know or teach them in a way that is comfortable. You got to do it their way or no way. But I'm watching my kids go to school because you got to. Because if you don't, then I'm going to jail. I'm going to get in trouble, so you better take your butt to school. Right. So when we can't have good access to healthy, clean air, shopping at Dollar General doesn't make sense. When you don't have a grocery store, when you don't have transportation to be able to, I have to buy healthy food now. That food don't last. When lettuce don't last 2 weeks inside of your refrigerator, you got to go, you know what I'm saying, like regularly, you know. And so when we don't have civil justice, when our basic needs, food, air, most people don't even recognize the environments that we live in. What type of work is happening near, you know, where you live? How is the environment, the air, you know, where you stay at? How does that affect your mood? How does that affect your health? Prisons, you know, most of our loved ones don't get counted in the census at home. They get counted in these small little towns, right, where they're incarcerated and start.
Oh, yeah.
You got thousands of people, hundreds of people sitting. But then they're not getting counted, you know, in the family.
Where they from,
and things like that. And so then we wonder why people end up committing crime. Violence, I heard one says, violence happens as a when people can't get their needs met. When I can't eat, when I can't love, when I can't express, when I can't dream, when I can't be, when I can't think, when I can't rest, when I can't draw, when I can't sing, when I can't rap, when I can't be that identity of who I am, you know, that erupts in certain types of ways. And so there's a direct relationship between civil injustice and then the likelihood of you becoming a victim and offender inside of the justice system.
Yeah. What is marginalized, poor, and disenfranchised communities?
I think that's something we need to ask ourselves. You know, it took me about 2 years before I started noticing that every time I was on a panel or on a platform and I was talking about our neighborhood, those were the words that existed. You know, I have to be careful saying black because then we assume it's all black people.
Mm-hmm.
And I speak from a criminalized, you know, I hate to say poor or marginalized, disenfranchised, you know, community, but those are the labels that they use for us. They're marginalized communities, meaning that these people, you know, are the bottom feeders, you know, of the community, that these are the poor people.
They reach their limit.
They reach their limit. Disenfranchised. Their rights are already stripped from them.
Right.
You know, they're already separated, you know, and then poor. There's so many poor people that live in poor neighborhoods that do not consider themselves poor. You know, I just saw one of our
so real.
Local community activists, you know, say that, you know, they're speaking for the powerless. It's so many people in prison that don't consider themselves powerless. So those are the labels, right, that our leadership, that our community organizers are, and we as people are speaking over to ourselves. Right, our marginalized communities, our disenfranchised. We got to have a different way of describing our neighborhoods. There may be challenges, there may be weaknesses, there may be issues. That's everywhere. But we need to start finding some healthier ways of describing.
I like that. It's like the way that they describe us, the labels can be sometimes not just misleading, but end up being harmful. You know what I mean? Because they're not. It's not administered correctly because you didn't. Yeah, exactly. You didn't diagnose it correctly, so it's hard to administer the right, you know, response.
Because it's race. We see black people, and then we go to black issues. We got a whole racial inequity report. I keep going back to that. And a lot of these resources I've made sure online. If you go to leahforjustice.com, put a lot of information, resources. But the Alachua, the racial inequity report of Alachua County. I'm telling participatory budgeting. I can tell you how we could have spent them $70,000. You know, to look at data and to build value in Alachua County. But we have a report now that has been the foundation, right, of organizations and institutions locally on their decision-making policies and practices against black people. But the only thing that they have to go on is the fact that what this report says, that we fall below under everything. Yeah, black third graders might be failing, but that report doesn't talk about how the culture differs, the language barriers, how the teacher don't know how to culturally respect, you know what I'm saying? The identity, mom's inability to not be there. We're not talking about all the realities.
That's just factors, yeah.
Looking at the outcome and not holding those responsible for these outcomes.
Talk to me about trust between people and police.
So, it has taken a long time for me to acknowledge that I'm an abolitionist. The first time that I heard about abolition, about a world where there was no police, no prisons, you know, I couldn't believe that. Like, I would not, you know, believe that. And it took some years. It wasn't until I really became a legal empowerment practitioner that I could confidently call myself an abolitionist. And for me, if police are going to be present in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in my psyche, I'm terrified of police. I don't give a damn. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's something that I carry around with me daily, because as soon as I see a flash, you know what I'm saying, that look like a light, as soon as I hear that sound, as soon as I see a cop, I'm going to be reacting. We got to have we got to define what that relationship is. If my relationship is I'm going to be unseen, then have an unseen relationship. If my relationship is things got to be better, then we got to start, you know, reaching out. That's why Leah's here. It's not just about services. It's about having more of these conversations so that we can choose a mayor and vote for a mayor that I ain't got to worry about, what type of police chief I got, because at least me and my mayor is on the same, you know what I'm saying? We got to have the relationship with our chief of police so that when he need our back, when it comes to legislative budgeting, and he needs a budget to get more programs so that we can have more record houses, more bowls, better resource officers, better, whatever that is, like, we got to have a relationship to the legislation, to the decision makers. We got to have a relationship inside of the decision making process.
I got a question here from a Facebook viewer, Mrs. Nikita Daniels. She wants to know, has the new sheriff, I'm assuming she's talking about Mr. Clovis Watson, is it? Mr. Clovis Watson Jr. Has the new sheriff, the new sheriff come out to speak on any of these issues? Are you privy to that at all?
So the only thing that I've heard that he coming up in a week or two, him and the public defender and the community organizers gonna be having a panel discussion based off the film and book Just Mercy that looks at death row conviction.
With your friend Brian Stevenson.
Yes, from Brian Stevenson. But I'm looking forward. Like, I don't know Clovis Watson or Sheriff Watson now personally, but like, I have gone to Capitol Days and heard him speak. I spoke on a panel with him. I've read about him, and so I have formed
an opinion
about him, and so I'm excited,
right,
to see what he's gonna do. But I also, because of that opinion and because of that investment, I feel like excited to also like be able to go to him when he's not talking right, or when things not changing,
right,
or to address these issues, because like that relationship counts, right?
No, I agree. I think in order to be a leader, you got to be able to listen to the people.
And not just listen to the people, but like work with the people. Like, don't have no conversation with me, but then things still look the same. We're talking about people that have power. This isn't Senator,
right,
somebody walking through the prison and then telling us something and walking away. This is,
God, I could really do something, absolutely, some change.
So we got to expect that change, and we got to hold him accountable, and we got to make them uncomfortable. But we also got to keep asking questions and use that voting power.
Nice. Let's talk a little bit about diversion programs.
Yes.
Let's first go into youth and accountability. How do those two things relate?
So most people don't know this, but my son got his first arrest in 2019.
Okay.
It was the Friday after my brother got arrested.
Wow.
And I mean, I was 2 years in the game. So my kids, I've done everything I can to make sure they have what they needed. They, don't go through nothing. And my son organized, kicked somebody's door. I had just moved to a brand new apartment. Kicked the door in, burglary, ran from police, and he went through a diversion program where he never had to go to court. He met with like a probation officer at Bays, and they gave him like, some packets. And because I'm his mama, he know how to answer all the questions, and it scared me.
You said he met with a probation at what now?
It's called Bays Correctional. It's a diversion program.
Okay.
Right here locally in Gainesville. I know they're actually also preparing to like bring parents and community onto their advisory board, but the probation officer, he had limited time. I recognized, like, I needed a dad. Just again, like, we use police to parent. I was hoping he could step up into these shoes for what my son needed, but there was this real fear. I could tell, like, my son, because there was no consequence, it didn't feel like there was any accountability. And again, because crime was so normal, it didn't matter that we lived in a gated community. It didn't matter that I lived in a white community. It didn't matter, that he was a car rider. It didn't matter that I was helping them with homework, that they had a healthy, because when they went to school, they were still with their peers. His environment, his music, his identity, who he was. Like, for him to live where we live, and then all of his friends live across the tracks, he had to show certain, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
he felt that he did.
It's certain way we talk about those beliefs.
Yeah,
those
that
rules that
machismo.
exist.
Yeah.
And so we do have diversions because there's a lot of incarceration rates on black men. There's a lot of programs for like black youth if it's their first time in trouble to make sure that they record, that they don't start forming a record. But then what I've also recognized is sometimes those programs do feel like, that we're going to give them these couple chances. Because then once we get them, and it's inevitable that we're going to get them, you know what I'm saying? We can then safely say that there was no room here for them. That there was no opportunity, here for them. And so accountability, it looks really different. But unless we're having these real conversations with our kids, I mean, they're big setups. It's almost like probation.
Now, so you have a firsthand experience here on both sides with the diversion program. So, does diversion help or does it prolong? What do you think?
In a way, I think it prolonged. I went to teen court.
I did too.
My first arrest.
Yeah.
I went to Pay Center for Girls.
Okay.
I went to Meridian. I went to, I'm watching my son now do.
How does it prolong? Explain that to me.
Because when there was not an effective long-term care solution for me to identify what the problem was, identify some methods for handling the problem, having safe place to practice solutions and support, it was just, I was doing what I had to do to get through each situation.
Right.
So I knew how to go to probation. I knew how to get through, this diversion. We get comfortable with all these different programs that we're just tweaking, by facilitator, diversity, race, and when it's not something that's really tailored for individual transformation, and growth. And so it was just a matter of time. I started getting help when I was about 11. And it wasn't until 23 that, boom, I finally, made the prison. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was almost like a part of me that was like, whew, at least I finally made it. I could stop putting on this facade.
Right. Wow, that's
trying
crazy.
to be successful and also trying to, survive in the streets.
It was like, that is so crazy. But I understand exactly what you're saying here. Let's move on to Florida and Alachua County rates of juvenile incarceration. What does that look like? So
we're one of the highest.
Wow.
Disproportionate.
You mean Florida as a state or Alachua County as a county?
State.
Okay.
The League of Women Voters has been doing a lot of amazing work, and it's funny that we're talking about this because I was the type that did not want to talk about juveniles when I first started doing this work. I felt like all of the attention was on juveniles, but there were not a lot of investment inside of adults, but our youth, one of the things I recognize is we judge youth by their age, but I mean, a lot of our babies got 2 and 3 kids. I mean, they getting on the city bus at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, working, taking care of their parents, taking care of their kids. I mean, they're really out here living adult lives. And so, they're getting either prosecuted we got real babies getting prosecuted as adults, or we're out here handling some kids, you know what I'm saying, some youth in a way that's, first of all, goes back to identity and culture, not just race. Just because these black kids don't mean we get to go in there with our black solutions, and deal with them some type of way. When you recognize what they're going through, it goes back to trauma, right? When you recognize and you can respect that hardness, that toughness, that protection that they've built around themselves, we can then, really start to connect with them as youth. And then they feel comfortable, like you was talking with the men, with learning something from Miss Jhody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We feel comfortable sharing something with Miss Jhody. I'm so surprised.
How to create the environment for them.
How the stuff that they share with me, and I laugh because it's the same stuff, right?
Right.
We was going through, and then that blessed my heart, and I don't have to beat them up. You know what I'm saying? I could just be a fertile place. But our youth is, I don't want to say they're in trouble, but we got to think about it. There's no place for them to be them. It's like existing in a video game, and there's only one little spot. It's just like there's for my son, we live out, outside on the outside of Gainesville now. Like he only see himself in Majestic Oaks. There's no other places, for him to comfortably see himself as the young man who he is. I look at my brother. I look at a lot of my youth, my young ladies, that I'm connected to that have graduated from Youth Build. My daughter loves her lashes. She red. She love her bleached blonde, hair. She love her 28 inches. That don't make her fast or, she don't have ratchet or nothing like that. But as soon as she go to school or as soon as, there's all these stereotypes. And so we got a lot of young people that are just, I used to think that I don't give a, attitude was like an attitude, but it's really a protection because there's no place.
Like a defense mechanism.
It's a defense mechanism.
Right.
For them to be heard, to be seen, to be valued, to be, uplifted. And so we got to create more spaces where, like, black kids can be black kids. And they're not going to be criminalized or shut down for it.
So, what about the Alachua County race? They up for juveniles?
So, we gotta first of all advocate because a lot of our kids don't look like kids. When there has to be a hearing before a youth gets adjudicated, as an adult. A lot of times it goes back to the neighborhood role in policing. When we're seeing youth out here getting in these issues, that my baby don't look like no youth. And so a lot of times we gotta advocate and make sure. Right now we got Darian Brockington, Jr. That baby has been sitting in the county jail for almost 2 years. He just turned 18.
Wow.
And he's accused. He's not even been found guilty of a crime.
That's amazing.
But he's just sitting inside of that. He's not getting an education. When we look at what's happening to our juveniles that are in the juvenile system, but a lot of parents, I feel safer with them in there than I do on the streets. And then so many parents tell me that. But
that's crazy. I've heard that before.
We don't see the protection, the armor that they have to put on, and that armor stays up when they come out on the outside. And so a lot of times it's not just about new legislation and new policy. It is about us, as representation of black kids, being in these places, having conversations with them, being a safe place, building that relationship of, I'm not here as an adult to shame you or beat you down. I'm here as an adult to share wisdom with you, to help you make decisions, And so they need us to be present more than anything. But DMC, our police chief, there's actually grants and funding right now. The Children's Trust, and there's millions of dollars. People are making decisions about for programs, diversion programs. We know the statistics. Those are our kids. Yeah. For restorative justice. Right now, money is being spent for restorative justice to be taught in our county, our Alachua County schools.
Wow.
Do we know what restorative justice is?
Is it being taught at all? Is a question.
It is being, our PCP's been trained in schools right now. PK Young is
nice.
Being trained. And so what does that look like? What is social emotional learning? What are those practices that our kids are using? How are we reinforcing those tools? How are we advocating at our, school system to make sure that black history, healthy black history, is being taught? Or more importantly, how are we teaching it? But we got to start showing up.
That's real.
Yeah.
Talk about the criminalized use of Alachua County. Hold on, first real quick. You got some shout outs here from Mrs. Gwen Renee. I think that's Gwen. I think her name's Calloway. Is Gwen's last name Calloway? She's saying, hey, Jhody.
Oh, Miss Gwen.
Yeah. I'm sure you know.
I'm telling you, black leadership, future.
I didn't even know she worked over there.
Yes.
And then Miss Nikita Daniel, she had another question, which was, do you think the rates are high because of lack of activities here?
Absolutely, a lack of activity. Also, because we have a lack of presence inside of the courtroom, it's easy for, I'm just seeing these kids get probation. And then I'm just seeing these kids get it, over and over again. And
we think, I know, I'm sorry not to cut y'all, but especially as young adults too, we think, oh, we got probation, we straight, man, they let me go, I'm gone now. You don't understand that you got a whole nother sentence that you got to deal with. You just think, oh, they let me out of court, I'm done. I've been there, man. That's crazy.
Or it's like passing along. I've had cousins, that went to the east side with me that never could read. 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, got passed along, graduated high school, still can't read, and now out here, living criminalized lives. And so, like, our kids are actually, what would make my baby kick a door in and organize a crime, and burglarize somebody's house, when he has means. And so we're not dealing with those, root issues of what our youth are going through, which is needs, decision making, accountability, trust. Most of them are not sleeping. You know what I'm saying? We don't eat. I know I'm bad for it. We eat a lot of noodles. And we eat a lot of cereal. And we don't go to sleep, and sleep 8 hours. And so there's a lot of emotional factors, risk factors. Having somebody that just say, I love you. I love being at youth build, because as hard as it might be for me to love on my 2 babies sometimes, that was like a place I could go every week, every other week, and love on, 22, 30, you know what I'm saying, like kids, and just be somebody that when you smile at them, you know what I'm saying, they know it's genuine, it's real.
That's amazing. Let's talk about, now, no, you spoke to me about this extensively in the past, but I want to hear actually more. Let's talk about the police youth dialogue, teen court, PACE. I'm not even familiar what PYB is.
So that's police, that is Project Youth Build.
Okay, Project Youth. Okay, cool.
Which is amazing, because we got to think of alternatives. When I started seeing that my son was failing in school, not because he dumb or he can't learn, but because there's no representation of him there. Because it's boring, because the teachers are disrespectful, because first of all, they don't recognize culture, identity, not respecting him, you know what I'm saying? But then they're expecting, right, respect. And so I'm actually going to do the application for Project Youth Build. It's 9 months. Kids get degrees. They learn how to actually get skills in building. They can directly go over to, Santa Fe College, if they're interested. And they get paid for going to school. Right now with COVID, my kid's 16. He's ready to get a license, ready to get a car. Where adults can barely find work. So then, like, what does that do to his morale and his energy? So a lot of times, like, we see the problem, but we got to piece together some, solutions. Teen court is, I got an opportunity to, participate and be like the judge, but to see it's still running the same way it was running. You know what I'm saying? When we was youth. 20, 30 years ago. How can we make it more realistic? A lot of the alternatives and solutions and preventions and diversions that are being created for our youth is not being created by or being developed with people that can understand who and how our youth, are. Police youth dialogues was something that I got introduced to when I started working at the River Phoenix Center for Peace Building. At-risk youth, because of the disproportionate minority contact, like Alachua County had excessive rates of contact between officers and black kids, kids not kids of color.
Right.
And so out of this, we have Will Havosa, he's the coordinator over at GPD. River Phoenix Center for Peace Building has been doing dialogues between youth and police officers, and these dialogues are supposed to help build relationship and trust and conversations between youth and police. And so a lot is happening again when we're not a part of these conversations. It's cool to see youth humanized. They get a chance to see that this officer is a human being. He's a person. He's not just a cop.
Right.
Like at 25, you recognize, like, wow, my mom
yeah.
person.
Yeah.
She's not just my mom, but she's a real woman.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, again, no culture, no identity. I've a few times heard like youth get bold enough to like really lift up, situations to use it as a basis for the dialogue. And a lot of times like the answers don't exist. When a youth shares a story of police, profiling him, and then the officer's response is, well, look at your hair. This young man had wicks. Having conversations, to me, like cultural conversations around the criminalization of how you look. If you walk into the front store and then you walk out of the back store, what does that look like? Okay, well, it's not his fault that he lives in Pine Ridge. You know what I'm saying? And if police are judging, our young people or just our culture based off these norms, but to me, I'm just a kid, or I'm just rich bitch, you know what I'm saying? I'm just Miss Mulatto, or I'm just, you know what I'm saying? Whatever my persona, my identity is, then we have to me. That's almost like you was talking about that gazelle.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that's real.
It's like prey.
Seen as threatening when you're just hanging out. Just like you say, you're just a kid or you just mulatto or whatever. And a lot of times that from just your existence is the what's seen as the crime.
So I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's good that we're at least attempting to have these conversations, but I don't feel like our kids is equipped. I feel like it's equipped to go in and have conversations with police about culture, about crime, about prevention, when we're not having them conversations. You know what I'm saying? Inside of our own community, it always felt like a burden on our young people.
Dr. Carr is the African American Studies chair at Howard University. The one thing he talks about a lot is a talk that W.E.B. Du Bois gave in 1960 before he left to go to Africa at like 90 years old. And he was talking to these black school teachers, these social studies teachers at Johnson C. Smith University in North Carolina. And what he tells them is that, I forgot the name of that speech, but what he tells them is they're going to change the laws. They're going to change them to favor you guys because they're fighting so hard for integration at this time. So they're going to change the laws. But what he said is once they do change the laws, you're going to have a decision to make as far as preserving your culture. Are you? If not, then somebody else is going to dictate your place in this. And it's so amazing. He talks about this all the time because it's like Mr. Du Bois had a microscope to see 50 years in the future. Like, cause that's exactly what happened. So now, like with our culture, we don't even have a grasp on what our identity and culture should look like. So other people kind of dictate that for us. And now the vicious cycle that is perpetuated.
Especially Gainesville is small. So typically if I'm, amongst black women, it's what? Deidre Houchin, Dave Baker, Ty Loud.
Shout out to those women too.
There's nothing bad about those women.
Yeah,
Johnson,
and Jhody.
Evelyn Fox, you know what I'm saying? So you have
I know them all.
It's just like this group, right? And so when I came back, it was
Tina
like
Certain. She's another one.
Yeah. I went to church,
shout out to them.
Shouts out to all of them. And while I love each, most of them, Lachey Johnson, got to shout her out too. While I love most of them,
right?
What I recognized was culturally, I'm not like none of them,
right?
You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I noticed then how I started to fit in, and then once I started feeling that inwardness to fit in, that's when I decided to push back. That's when I was like, I'm not gonna not get my tattoo.
I like Kevin Gates.
I love me some Kevin Gates.
Yeah.
I'm listening to NBA Youngboy before I get here. I'm gonna get my gold teeth. I used to tell Jeffrey.
You getting a lot of shout outs right
now. You know what I'm saying?
Chloe Donnell's here now. Yeah, she's saying how much she loves you so much.
And I love you guys, but I had to love me first.
Right.
And so, like, it's so important, like, that people see me, see us, and recognize that that's not a criminal. Now, you see me doing some old fraudulent gangster some stuff, then judge me based on my behavior. But don't judge me because I'm sauced up.
Right.
I sauced the Santana is like my everything. You know what I mean?
I never heard of that person before you.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what's up.
So don't judge me.
I think, and I just want to kind of be clear on what a lot of the women that you just stated. Shout out to, I cover for the past, for going on 4 years now, I've been covering a lot of the local stuff, you know what I mean, especially concerning our people on the east side of town. And those ladies that you name, a lot of those are the players.
Terry Bailey.
Terry Bailey's another one. Shout out to her. There's a lot of good ones. Miss Diane McGraw.
Yes.
I just stopped Miss Leonetta McNeely in Publix the other day and told her I just told her thank you. You know what I mean? Thank you for what you do. I think the difference is you see the ladies here. I want to shout them out again. People like Gwen, or like Chloe, or like the brilliant Miss Nikita Daniels here. I think with our generation, especially with our women, I can name a few off the top of my head right now who I see them a lot. People like Angelica Williams, or people like Miss Quenisha Johnson out of Alachua. I see these girls, Katie McKnight. I see these girls, and they're very vocal, and they want to be a part of that. I think the difference is there's a little age gap between the ladies that we just mentioned at first, and a lot of the younger ladies, the ladies that my contemporaries of my age. There needs to be some type of bridge there. And I just don't see it. I see the separation, and it's not like it's bad because we're all on one accord. We're all striving for the same thing. I think there just needs to be more push for cohesion. Not to mention the black men who are my age or younger, who I see them. They make posts, and a lot of them might not be as accurate as we want them to be, but they still have that passion to want to do these things. It's just we have an issue with cohesion where we don't know how to all come together. I think.
Not judge me, like you can love
right
and love Jhody. You can love
absolutely. I do.
You can love Jhody.
I do.
And like one of the things I used to feel like when I was around them was like I have to be because I don't know anything. And then it was like at some point I realized like damn. Like, we just alike. It's just we talk different.
Right.
Or we believe different. I mean, diversity is that spice, right? That
might like to twerk sometimes. Nothing wrong with twerking every now and then.
I still twerking.
Keep twerking.
You know what I'm saying? Keep twerking. Because
but that don't mean, but come to the community meeting. You know what I'm saying? We can twerk in the parking lot if you want. But I think that's where, that's the thing. Like, I think there's this generational style difference where we feel like we're being judged.
And sometimes we be judging ourselves.
And we do.
Because big shout out to Lachey Johnson. She has
okay. I know who you're talking about. Okay.
And I remember the first time I forgot about her. The second one, if I went to her conference, I was feeling so uncomfortable. I'm like, well, what is it? I mean, that was my dream, right? To locally be in a room full of strong, independent black women. And then I recognized it. When I was growing up, because I was the overweight girl, I wasn't a pretty girl. I had never been like the girl with the lashes. I've never been like, and I noticed that I was judging the women there. And I was judging myself. That dialogue was happening inwardly. And in that moment that I recognized that I was judging the women here, you know what I'm saying? But then I was also I was still judging myself based on some Rollins, you know what I'm saying? I was in school like in the late 80s.
Right.
In that moment, I had a choice, you know, and I had the ability to see the women as sisters, you know, to then be able to share myself with Lachey in a way that where she's different, it compliments me.
Right.
You know, like the first time
stronger together.
Yeah. I was able to call her. So now that I'm really becoming more into my feminine, you know, power, like I got sisters that I can call on, but like these sisters don't judge me either.
Yeah.
But
we're not all one thing. Yeah, we're very multifaceted. Listening to you describe this is something I've never heard before. Obviously, I'm not a woman. I never knew about this dynamic here. What's going on in my mind while listening to this is how can we reconcile with our 80s babies, 90s babies with the male gender and our ladies? Because I feel like, especially with like a lot of the ladies I just named, our ladies are on it. They own it. You know what I mean? They a lot of them. I mean, we all need to organize, but a lot of them they have the passion and the fortitude and the wherewithal to get a lot of things accomplished, and a lot of them are very conscious of local issues, and they have the desire and want to do something. Our men, I feel like it's a lot of, like I said, we deal with pride a lot. Our men, I feel like they have that same passion. They still want to be engaged, but it's that a lot of time, we don't know how to humbly and graciously. How does it work? How do we reconcile this
from the inside out? First of all, I feel like for me, right, and I got started I got started with the FRRC and the votings movement, and then I
FRRC,
the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition.
Gotcha.
That's how my career really started, around the movement for voting reenfranchisement. And then quickly I joined the movement to end mass incarceration of women and girls. I am very heavily, I'm just now to the point you start to see me, and I'm not wearing a National Council shirt, but you don't see me, or you don't see my work. You don't see me out here bumping women's rights, or like I'm a part of a movement and I'm working on myself. First of all, as a woman, I'm learning how to be submissive, myself. I'm learning my own femininity, and it starts first of all with me. It started then with me getting a national hood of sisters. It starts with me even just in this conversation recognizing all the women I just named. I can do a better job of reaching out to them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Calling them, picking up the phone, sending a little text message. It's relationship. And I feel like what I have seen is there's too many men left behind. There's this national narrative that women get less than men. And maybe we do, maybe, whatever, but like I don't see nobody doing that emotional support for men. Like women to come to an emotional support. Like you said, at least women, you got mama, you got kids, we know how to lay that heart down. But like that's why I love the work that I do on that side of justice, because I love being that place.
And it transcends gender. It's not just for us, just for that. I was me and this young lady here, Miss Nikita, who I'm going to read another one of her comments here in a second. We were in this. We were in the University of Florida entrepreneurship program together. We both graduated from that, and they had a person from SCORE come. And I didn't even know this. I was actually just being, devil's advocate. But through SCORE, you can't, and you have to wait 2 years to be considered a minority business, unless you're a woman. And I'm like, my thing was, I actually put in one of the comments, like, what if I identify as a woman? But I think that's just one of the things that it doesn't make sense to me to exclude men in that. I just don't see why. I don't understand. And there's nothing against women at all. But if we're both minorities, we're both minorities. I mean, if you're recognizing that we're all minorities. So I think there's definitely obstacles like that as far as men don't feel like we get the same kind of support.
But how many men are talking about it?
But that's
something that a man know, but it's like I've seen it. It's like I'm noticing areas that as a woman I just can't go. And like respecting that, but then
this is the thing. A young lady, I can't even remember who it was, but I was talking about this kind of recently, and a young lady, I think she gave me the most brilliant response, which was, that's a male problem. And it is. We have to, that's a brotherhood issue. And it's something that really bewilders me, because we do that in the hood. Like we got a problem with somebody else, we go talk to our homeboys about it. If our baby mama tripping at them, we go talk to our homeboy about it. I don't understand why that's not more on the surface as like a tool.
How many homeboys do you really have?
Exactly, maybe one or two. So that you would speak to candidly like that.
Feels comfortable
exactly
enough to share.
But with women,
stuff.
If a woman, like, it could be a woman you don't really know. But if you, with women, like, if they see another woman going through something, they naturally care, or they naturally want to assist, or they naturally even have encouraging words. With men, I don't think that we necessarily are default to, like, the hate, but we're not as vocal and supportive as to the male plight. You know what I mean? As I think we should be.
You dap that dog up.
Yeah.
But then, like, I love the fact when men, and I can have those intimate conversations with them, and they are weak. And they are strong. Right. Like, those are words, maybe we got to find different words for it. But, like, bro needed, what I'm saying, some support. And, like, bro needed to be able to break down, or bro needed to
it's often our women that have to fill that void, so they're doing double time now, because they got everybody coming to them for, that's what makes these black women so remarkable. Something that you said before, I think on one of the previous episodes, that was very revealing to me, and it's just plain out sad, to be honest, but it's true, is a lot of times nowhere else will, especially for our men, they can find that support system, that comfortability, except jail. And it's crazy. I know from people who never been in that situation, they might think like whatever they want to think about that. But men, a lot of times, that's where they're most comfortable even talking about certain things they go through or feeling like speaking about things that they're not judged.
There's men right now with AIDS. There's men finding out that they have HIV.
Right.
There's men with STDs. We look at 1 in 3 people have HPV, have herpes. I mean, that it might sound like something funny or something shameful, but the reality is every 3 men that you see.
Woo.
Incarceration, you know what I'm saying, affects 1 in, I look at 3 out of every 17 men. So, like, when we see our young boys, and so, like, I practice so much with my son. You know what I'm saying? And I have learned to, first of all, hold him accountable. You know, treat him how to treat me. You know what I'm saying? And then, like, also not put those male, female, you know, like, standards. But a lot of times, and you got to have trust. For somebody to just say, I'm messing up. For somebody to, you know, share themselves with you, you know, more than that 15%. For somebody to go beneath that waterline and give up that 85%, it got to be trust, though. You know, the amount of men that I've seen sexual violence, sexual abuse. You know, a lot of men who mothers treat them like crap. How many men are still brokenhearted? It still amazes me how brokenhearted men are over not having fathers in their home. And, like, to see that impact in men 30 and 40 years old. But you don't have, typically we focus on the youth, you know. So, but to me, those are great opportunities because men are in the jail. Men are in probation offices. Men are standing on the end of the blocks, you know what I'm saying, of the apartment buildings. Like, men are, young men, we know where our people are. And so sometimes these solutions isn't about just changing the law and changing the policy. Having a real conversation. Right. You know what I'm saying? And being available for these conversations.
Talk a little bit about lack of opportunity in community.
Wow. So, first of all, let's just start with Career Source.
Okay.
You know, the entrepreneurship jobs or the availability, you know, that is for people to have identity. When I look at my son, he looked between Lil Baby, oh my goodness, Blade. We call him Blade around the house. Like, even just his style.
Shout out to Blade.
Shout out to Blade.
Well, this has nothing to do with this conversation, man, but I gotta say this. Without Blade, there would be none of your favorite comic book movies. Blade saved Marvel, the black superhero. Nobody talks about this. They didn't think any of their movies would sell at all. They had sold all that shit. But Blade comes along and makes this fucking movie in the late 90s, and it saved the entire company. But I'm sorry, man. So shout out to Wesley Snipes, man.
Shout out.
You know what I'm saying? Because I always like to talk about Blade because, and shout out to the soundtrack. Mystical was on this all over that bitch.
You know.
But I'm sorry, baby. I shouldn't.
But when my son go to school,
they call him Blade.
They call him Nino Brown. What for 2 years his teachers was saying he looked like Nino Brown. Okay. Like, how can we see Blade? They see Nino.
That's funny, man. Wesley Snipes from Orlando, man. You guys might be related. He's from the Jones side of Orlando. He's from right by Jones High School. Yeah. Him and Angela Bassett's from St. Pete. You got Denzel Washington is from Daytona Beach, Florida. Nobody knows this. Denzel Washington went to high school in Daytona, at Mainland, the same high school as Vince Carter. All these people come through Florida and they have this relationship with Florida, and like we don't even know. Man, like Florida's the shit, man. Florida's the shit, yeah.
I'm so proud of you.
Anytime I go to other states they hear from Florida, they know like it's Florida in this bitch, like for real. Cause Florida's the shit. Florida, Texas, California, they're the only states. Me and my brother talk about this a lot. Jamie Foxx from Terrell, Texas, a little small town like Newberry or something. People from those states, they feel like they're like better than people from big cities. Like you could be from a little country town in Florida, but you look like, nigga, I'm from Florida, nigga. I don't care if you're from New York City or wherever, but I'm from Florida. Like, and that's just how that's because the whole entire state is what it is.
That
man.
Culture, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's just what we do down here.
And we don't see those opportunities. You know, my kid don't want to work at McDonald's.
I had no idea I'd be talking about that today. Sorry about that.
But, it's real. I have a little cousin. He's in Ocala. And he want to be an actor. He know who he want to be. There's no opportunities, like, for acting. There's nothing really, even for our youth. I see my son struggle with basketball. Like, that's the only thing his mind could think to do is basketball, because, like, there's no other images, you know, or just anything for him to compare to do to find out who he is. And so he struggled with, I can only transform into what I can see, a basketball player. And so we need more cultural diverse.
Well, that's why imagery is so important. I'm very curious about this new group in Gainesville, the 100 Black Men in Gainesville. I don't know if you heard about that. I think that, organizations like that, organizations like Lachey has.
Even Caleb, Caleb needs to be out.
Oh,
right.
Caleb Young, shout out to him. Keelan and those fellas. All these guys. That's why, like, it's important to have people to. My friend Matt Bowman is a black pilot. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? People like that who, because I forgot my guy's name, Steven something, the black guy at the Actors Warehouse, who's you know, but at the same time, we need that representation. We need the young guys to see that, to see there's a successful
James
black
Lawrence,
there's a successful black playwright in Gainesville, Florida, who's writing plays, who you might want to go learn something from or whatever. And he's one of the nicest guys on the planet. He'll come and same with Matt Bowman, who's a black pilot who's always trying to find. He does a podcast with his daughter where they just talk about black tech stuff all day.
You got Devin Coleman right there in Jacksonville, who's a writer, author, Renata. In Jacksonville. I mean, we gotta just have more visibility.
Right.
People
That's what imagery's big.
These basketball players, we got the University of Florida right here in Gainesville. I had to hit one of my homegirls up the other day. I was like, I know so many people go to UF. Why can't one of these basketball players come and have a conversation with my son?
Right.
You know, what does it look like with COVID-19?
Imagine what that would do.
Look what that would just do when he can see.
Play basketball with some kids from Village Green one day. I mean, they won't forget that for the rest of their life.
The only person you got, what, is basketball cop? The only person?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so we got all these folks.
There's a football player, Teddy Bridgewater. He's from Miami. He grew up in Miami, but he plays with. I don't know who he plays with now, but he was playing with the New Orleans Saints, and he rode his bicycle from his house. This guy's a professional football player. He rode his bicycle from his house to the stadium to watch the high school football players play their state championship or whatever. And he goes and sits on the bench with him, and he talks to them. They're like, "What?" And he has on regular clothes. He's not dressed like Little Baby or nothing like that. He's just a regular person. And he goes and sits on the bench and talks to all the players, and they ask him why he's doing this. And he tells them, nobody did this when I was a kid. Nobody came and talked to us, hung out with us. And I just thought that was so cool. This kid is from the worst part of Miami. You know what I'm saying? So he knows what this looks like. And that's why imagery is so big. That's why I love people like LeBron James and people who just go out the way, like Ava DuVernay, to show, who shows it's important for them to show us in a different light, to show us doing different things.
Have that ability. I have on my Black Obsidian Wealth Pichu bracelet. There probably ain't too many people. This brings me wealth and good luck into my life. I literally tattoo NBA. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Never broke again, because
nice.
That's my manifestation. Peace, justice. Like, I practice manifestation. I practice, magic. And so, like, we each, every time I'm my most authentic, my best self, I get to share. I don't get to change anybody, but I get to uninterrupted, unwatered down, share myself. And the more that I'm me, the more it gives other people opportunity to reflect who they are. And so we each can do that amazing work.
Let's talk a little bit about the role of the actors in the court. Because I was watching that Chicago 7 documentary, and that's what they really played on that throughout that movie about the world being a stage, but more emphasis on the court being a stage. And I'm saying that because I like the way you put this down on our plan here as actors. You had the judge, the prosecutor, the defense attorney. Can you just give us a description here of the actors in the court and And yeah, let's talk a little bit about that.
And so, and we got to be prepared. It's just time for us to be prepared.
Because we put those people there.
And we put those people there, but until we can make the necessary changes, those people are there. It's almost like being on a monopoly board. If you know you at risk of taking your butt to jail, or you got a loved one, somebody going through this process, I mean, it is what it is. And it breaks my heart when I see, folks have these expectations, but like for me, it's not that I'm unsympathetic. It's just that it's routine. You have 94 to 98% of people plea out. So that's, the process in itself. Within the first 24 hours of you getting arrested, you're going to have first appearance. That judge is not going to be your sentencing judge. That judge is only deciding whether or not you should be released on your own recognizance and what that bail amount should be. When you go to arraignment, that court proceeding is only about how do you plead. Are you going to be pleading guilty, or are you going to be pleading, not guilty? Your prosecutor is there, unfortunately, to prosecute. Our laws in Florida says that, our court system is designed, for punishment. Shouts out to Gretchen Casey with the Mend Initiative, who's local here in Gainesville, that is trying to legislatively get that law changed. But like currently our laws say that that's what our court system is here for. It is for, punishment. So the state, I see it's the same thing. It's like the devil with me. He always come with me with dudes. It's like he tried to get me right. I finally learned, right? And he used the same trick every time. It's a dude. And so like I've learned now how to be like, no, I don't think so. And like move around that. And so like bringing up your charges. Most people don't recognize that for you to be sentenced below the guideline. Most people, my score sheet. Okay, but for a downward departure, there's mitigation. A lot of times we're not getting support for mental health. You done had a drug addiction all your life and never got. And
mitigation is what helps you in court, right?
It's
the stuff that
downward departures. Judges have discretion, and so that means that they can't act outside of the law. Unless they have like these certain discretions. And so for a judge to sentence you to something below, third degree is punishable by up to 5 years. Second degree, 15. For first degree is 30 years. Capital offense, that's your life crime. So if you did a third degree felony and your score sheet, you have enough points for them to sentence you to prison, that judge is bound by the law on how much he can sentence you, how low he can sentence you. Most people don't even recognize that there's a whole statute with about 10 different reasons of why a judge could actually sentence you below those guidelines.
Wow.
Some of those reasons is if you have a drug problem. If you were too young to appreciate. We got Darian Brockington Jr. right now sitting in jail for a crime he didn't even commit. However, there's downward departure mitigating factors.
He's a kid.
Man. He's a kid.
Yeah.
Most people don't recognize that it's unconstitutional. You can't get a no bond. Like for a judge to sentence you to no bond, it has to be a reason. So when you have a bond that's $100,000 and you don't have no income, that's technically considered a no bond.
Definitely.
So we're not even, aware of not just the actors, but like once we recognize that these are actors, we recognize that the judge, the prosecutor, the public defender, those Florida rules of criminal procedures, which I did put them on the website, they have to abide by those rules. So that deposition, calling of witnesses, evidence, pretrial motions, all of that stuff is law. They don't get to just make it up. And so they're just moving along, right? But when we don't know what those rules are, when we don't know what the role is, we got too many prosecutors being judges. We got too many judges that should be, to me, or not to me, but the judge is supposed to be a neutral facilitator, right? But we got judges using discretion to, act as if like they're parents, or they're acting in the greater good of community and have absolutely no relationship to that community.
Sheesh.
Because what John lives, he belongs to Linton Oaks community. He ain't even, his crime happened in Linton Oaks probably for the 4th, 5th time with the same, person. And so we have people right? Making decisions, and so they can't just do whatever they want to do. But because we're not there, and because we don't know what those rules
we don't hold them to the standard of
we don't hold them to the
accountability.
standard.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the first 24 hours after arrest.
Yes.
What participatory defense is,
Yes.
and the role of family and community in the courtroom.
So first of all, family has power. We have power. I watched my brother's $700,000 bond with the toughest judge in Alachua County, but because that diversity of people, standing room only, showed up in that courtroom, there's no way, right? That judge could not reduce that bond down to an affordable bond because the people was there, and he's accountable, to the people. Our folks are innocent until proven guilty. So right now you can go on our Facebook to the Leah website. If you have a loved one that's incarcerated, I am starting back doing one-on-ones, and then next month, the first week of February, we're going to go back to the weekly hub meetings. But the first 24 hours after arrest, you should be calling court services. And I'm speaking to Alachua County. I'm speaking in reference to Florida. If you're listening, tuned in from outside of Florida, get with your public defender's office, reach out to me if you need some help researching your Florida or your felony flow chart. We do have a flow chart on the Leah website for Florida, but do not be talking on the phones. When your loved one call you, the first thing people want to do out of emotion is tell you what's
story.
Going on, telling you what's happening. Shut them up. Hang up the phone. Don't absolutely do it. I'm telling
Stop
you.
Snitching.
Stop talking on your phones.
Stop snitching on yourself.
On your loved one. Scream into the phone. Hang up the phone, and they will learn to stop talking. I will not even answer the phone. But do not have conversations. Also, you can go classification. The jail has a classification. You can get a notarized letter from your loved one. They will take it to your loved one to sign if you're taking care of their kids. If you need to be able to make decisions for school. Also, if a person has child support, reach out to us. Get that child support stopped, held into abeyance. Also, remember that just because the judge doesn't set the bail at first appearance doesn't mean that you cannot get a bail reduction hearing. That hearing is going to be so important because not only do we get to advocate and we get to bring community into the courtroom, but we also get to prep the lawyer for this hearing. And this may be one of the only hearings where the court will actually get to hear about the character of who your loved one is, because everything else is going to be procedural, based off the police report, witnesses, and evidence. And so this is a very crucial part in court services. Your loved one may qualify for pretrial services inside of Alachua County. But if you don't know what those are, and if your lawyer is not asking for them, the judge is just sitting on the bench thinking about what's going to be the best opportunity for you or for your loved one. Somebody has to initiate that process by speaking it, by asking for it, by, sometimes I've seen judges be sitting up there reading, making decisions, and if somebody's not saying, excuse me, Your Honor, if someone's not speaking on behalf of your loved one, they just go with, they're on that flow, right? They're on that process.
Trying to get the
lunch.
lunch.
Your loved one just goes right through the process. And so write everything down. Make sure that you have conversation with that lawyer, that you're writing. Everything needs to be through email. Every question that you ask, I know we like to call, I know we like to show up, do that, but in addition to showing up at the PD's office, write it the email too. Follow up, you calling with, I just called and left a message, but we have to start having paper trails. We got to be watching every court date. We got to be listening to everything that's said, and we have to make sure these PDs, these defense attorneys, they work for your family member. These are officers of the court, and so if they're not doing the things that the rules prescribe for them to do, then they should be able to give you a good reason why. And then second of all, a lot of times we don't preserve the record. And so what that means is your loved one gets sentenced to 50 years in prison, then we can't appeal it because certain things didn't get said in court. Certain actions did not happen. And so you can't go back later and appeal something your lawyer didn't do or something that didn't get said if it wasn't preserved. And so we have to sometimes speak up for our loved ones, make sure that our loved ones know how to speak up for themselves, but we also got to be holding these lawyers accountable and tracking everything. Because in the event that our loved one does get sentenced to some time, we want to make sure that we have in writing, to support them with post-conviction.
Let's talk about, you mentioned it just now, but I want you to kind of go through it a little bit. The felony flow chart, starting with first appearance and then all the way down to how it works.
So first appearance, you get your bond. Your bond's still too high, so now we go and we request for a bond reduction hearing. We make sure that the court knows who your loved one is. Also, we've talked to court services, making sure that court services, because court services calls at like 5:45 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So these people are at 5 o'clock in the morning trying to call you from a number we don't know. If you like me, you don't answer numbers that's not saved.
Mm-hmm.
So answering that phone or calling them back, making sure that they do know that your loved one has ties to the community, where they work, where they live, that they can live with you if they're, released. Making sure that they have enough information, because that's the person who's going to be relaying information to the court. Once the court assigns a PD, that does take about a week for that transition to happen, sending that first email. And these are things that we help you with at Participatory Defense. Sending that first email with all the questions in it that you and your loved one have. Making sure that you have the necessary, information. Then also getting your documents. If your loved one has mental health issues, substance abuse issues, if they've gone through things, do you need help getting a medical record? Do you need help, a lot of times, like, lawyers might not be talking to witnesses. They might not be seeking the evidence. And so you asking these questions will either push the attorneys to go out and do those things, or at least it has a record, of you documenting, your loved one being able to document on the record in court that these things aren't happening, for them. And then it comes down to two options. You either plea out or you take it to trial. I know a lot of us have fear of going to trial, but that's what a trial is for. It is for a jury of your peers to be able to listen to all of the facts of the evidence and determine. Each crime has 2 to 3 elements. And so the state, without a shadow of a doubt, has to prove that you didn't commit just 1 or 2 or 2 or 3, but that all 3 of the elements, 2 or 3 elements of that crime existed. And if they can't show by evidence, that you did both those things or all 3 of those things, a jury is supposed to reasonably find you not guilty. So, but if there's reason for guilt, there's only two guilty pleas. You can either negotiate a plea with the state, where you and your attorney goes back and forth. That's also where downward departures come in. A lot of times we're not, going to the attorney and saying, hey, well, my loved one, actually qualifies for 6 of the 10, downward departures. How could this, get a plea? A lot of times we wait for the plea offer to come to us when we can be shaping what that plea is and, advocating for our plea.
That's so important.
And that, and then also bringing community in. When you got a plea agreement of non-prison, but you got Leah, dream defenders, you got mentors, you got people from community that's all standing there with, such and such, saying that we want to be a part of his support team, it looks different. But if you don't plea out to the state, most times people plea out to the judge. That's your no contest plea, nole contendere. And what that's saying is, I ain't disputing the facts, or, if there's any evidence, I ain't disputing it. I ain't saying that I did it. But you're pleading to the bench. You're going to mercy for the court. And the court, unless you have downward departures, listed, he's bound to sentence you between the minimum, which is whatever your score sheet scores out to, and the maximum, which could be 5 years, it could be 15, it could be 30, it could be life, it could be, a number of things. And so if you're not prepared to make that plea to the bench, a court looks at it and they typically go with what the state's, recommended offer is. And so after that process, sentencing, mitigation. We do that at Leah. Social bios. Not everybody's innocent. Some people commit crimes. And so then what a social bio, we call it a freedom plan, is we show all the reasons why a loved one shouldn't have to go do that sentence in prison. because we know that doesn't make it better. But we show how if employment has been the issue. Remember, it's civil justice issues, right? So if it's employment, if it's housing, if it's, conflict with parents, if it's domestic, battery, if it's substance abuse, then we build a mitigation packet to show the court why, first of all, the worth and value of this person's life. Second of all, what their plan is. And then third of all, what support systems have we put in place to be able to support them during and after their personal plan.
All right. Talk a little bit about post-conviction.
Yeah.
Law libraries, jailhouse lawyers. I know you know a little something about that.
I was a jailhouse lawyer. Definitely leahforjustice.com. Every prison, most people don't think that prisoners have rights. It's your constitutional right to have access to the court. In Florida, after 30 days after your sentence, you have up to 30 days to file an appeal to challenge trial court issues. You have 2 years from sentencing to file a post-conviction. That's where a lot of people bring in issues of evidence, issues, against the prosecutor, issues with ineffective assistance of counsel. That's where you can challenge those issues. You have no time frame for an illegal sentence. You have to exhaust all your state remedies to file for a Supreme Court or a higher court, to hear your issues. And we have 60 days to file a beggar's motion. And that's in Florida where it's a mitigation. You have 60 days from sentencing where that judge can decide, maybe I did sentence that person a little too high.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yes, within 60 days can
beggar's
bring
motion.
You back to court, a beggar's motion.
Wow.
It's a 38 motion C.
What you know? What you don't know?
Bring your loved one back and offer them, a mitigated sentence or a lesser sentence within 60 days. And that time frame stops when they file an appeal or a post-conviction. So that's, again, why it's important. You can call Leah at any phase, of the justice system. But clemency, we got to start talking about it. That's going to be something I'm going to be pushing this year. Right now, we don't have a governor. The governor is pretty much like the president of your state. That who governs our Department of Corrections. The governor has the power for commutation of sentence. Once a person has done at least a third of their sentence, the governor and at least 3 people, I believe, on his cabinet can vote to have your loved one's sentence commutated. So I have a brother serving 30-year mandatory. In 10 years, I would like to petition the governor and his board for a commutation of sentence and show why my brother, is in danger of spending 20 more years in prison, but why and what his life would look like. The only thing is we have a backlog right now with commutations of sentence. I think it's 25 years.
Wow.
They only meet every 3 times a year. It's like a lotto, to get somebody in. And so we got to start putting pressure on DeSantis.
Yeah.
He has the power to let our people go. And if he's not going to do that, then we need to be preparing who's going to be the next governor of Florida and making sure that our next governor or this governor exercises the power of commutation of sentence to free people on clemency and rectify what these trial courts have done.
Talk about the power of voting in relation to that.
We vote the governor.
Right.
Imagine if not Kamala Harris, but Ayala Maris.
Okay.
Aramis Ayala.
You got
it.
it.
Backwards. So imagine if former prosecutor of Orlando, Aramis Ayala, became the next governor of Florida. Imagine, if she had the power to say, you know what, I'm going to open up my calendar to 5 times a year because we have a system, that's bloated. Imagine if we had progressive governor that, recognized that having people incarcerated with COVID, is ridiculous and, actually let people that are serving life sentences who are in their 80s, people with terminal illnesses that are incarcerated, if these people can come home. So we vote for all of the people who have the decision power to not just release people, but to make sure that prisons are qualified, have health standards, to make sure that the budget isn't just on salaries, but it's on actual programs. that is the power that we have to choose those decision makers, even prosecutors, even public defenders, even sheriffs, even police officers, even mayors, even judges.
And that leads me to prisoners' rights. Excuse me. Conditions to confinement. What's that about?
So, even though we don't learn about human rights, we do have human rights. You know,
right.
Those are like your civil rights, which most people probably afraid when we think about the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we see clear examples of what happens, you know, when people stand up for civil rights. It's almost like we're desensitized to that. But your loved ones, just like excessive use of force, you know, has the right to not be beaten, to not be starved, to not have, when I got to prison, my mattress, I mean, literally had maybe 4 lumps of cloth in it. It had feces on it. It had blood on it. I mean, the conditions. We lived in dorms with asbestos. We were in dorms that had mold in it, you know, most of the year, but then we had to paint over it right before, you know, an inspection. To have somebody like get hit in the face, beat up by police, you know, sexually assaulted by police. We do not send people to prison for punishment. People are sentenced to prison as a punishment.
Well, I'm fairly certain that the UN deemed solitary confinement cruel and unusual punishment. Like, but we use it in America like it's as another tool of jail. Like put you in jail while you in jail.
And that's the people. I was a guest of the United Nations. I spoke on 5 panels.
Nice.
And went to the United Nations last year. And, you know, I was one of few Americans, you know, that were actually a part of that national human rights. Leah is a part of their Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations is leading those goals. I believe there's 17 of them, 18 of them. To achieve by 2030. SDG 16 is for justice for all and more peaceful, inclusive institutions in society. And so we're a proud partner with the UN. And so as Americans, we have to, even though we don't have a president or our government is not connecting to that national United Nations, you know, call to action, we as, you know, citizens, we have to make sure that our voices are a part of that and that we set those standards, you know, right here in the U.S.
Talk a little bit about reentry, transition, and work release programs, recidivism, and that sort of thing.
You know, transition class, 120 days before your release, you have a class with somebody that ain't been through nothing, you know, that ain't been through nothing.
Right.
That's going to have a 6-week class with you. Most of the time, that's just a milestone. You know, you got 120 days left. It's transition. You know, no one's learning real tools, you know, and skills. But, like, also, that's not, like, a space that we can't occupy. As Alachua County citizens, it's public record who's going to be released back to our community. I love the model in Jacksonville, where they're connecting with people that's been released back to Jacksonville at least 6 months, you know, prior to those people actually coming back home. What would it look like? We have churches, you know, we have organizations, you know, 100 Black men. What does that look like? You know, when we're doing a transition, you know what I'm saying, class where real Black men, real Black women, or real women, you know, real men are talking with folks about parenting, you know, talking with folks about the reality of homelessness, talking with folks about the reality of, you know, employment, education, so that people come out more prepared, but then also prepared for the no's. I got turned down so many damn times, you know what I'm saying, in my journey. But the greatest gift that I had before I got out was that I chose, like, I didn't care. Like, I was going to be who I knew I was, no matter what. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I was going to be me.
Determination.
Determination.
Talk a little bit about, this is I'm very curious about this, collateral consequences. And then you put, it's a Black thing. What's that about?
So again, the narrative is that formerly incarcerated people have these collateral consequences. So that means as a result of being a felon or being convicted of a crime, you now have these consequences of no safe housing, not a big pool of employment, not being able to apply for certain schools or degree programs, applying, for certain social benefits and things like that. But again, that's not just a formerly incarcerated problem. It's important for us to not just allow our government, right? Because then they allocate funds, or we're making decisions, when black people, again, poor black people, or people in criminalized, isolated, communities, the same way there's a collateral consequence to being formerly incarcerated, it's a collateral consequence to being black and on welfare.
Right.
There's a consequence to being black and being on food stamps. Now you got to put that man on child support. Now you got to be going to these classes, that talk to you like you an idiot. You got to use your precious. My brother Julius has taught me this. The most precious thing that we have as people is my time. And we be scared to say that. And people know me, forgive me, I do not answer my phone all the time. I am not about to kill myself responding to every email. Like, I have learned you got to choose your battles, because my time, my sanity. If I'm going crazy, if I'm anxious, if I'm pissed, if I'm tired, I can't operate like that. My mind can't be, in an emotional state, but then also be functioning, healthy. And so, a lot of times it's so much going on that, constitutes to why people are not getting ahead. And so we have to stop labeling and criminalizing, one another, and demand for more opportunities, more culturally diverse spaces, for a woman to be able to show up. I've had so many women be able to get help from me that they would not have gotten from somewhere else because of how they dressed, or because of how their hair looked, or because they had to bring a baby with them to an interview.
Wow.
Whereas somebody else would have looked at them and seen trashy, ratchet. I would even have the owners would watch me from the camera and look at the people that I was interviewing and hiring. But I had enough common sense and enough life experience and enough respect, that I recognize a woman ain't bringing her baby to no job interview because she ratchet. She bringing a baby to a job interview because she ain't got nobody to keep her.
She have to.
You know what I'm saying? Because she got to. And she 9 times out of 10 applying for this job that she don't want to do. You know what I'm saying? That's not going to pay her for what she doing because of that same baby. I understand what it's like when you taking care of everything. You know what I'm saying? Even if everything just that man. And so I ain't taking care of my head away, or I'm not taking care of my body the way, you know what I'm saying, that I should. Like, that person's not looking in the mirror seeing a mess. That person's looking in the mirror hopefully seeing themselves.
Yeah, survival, man.
Survival. And so we gotta flip the script, right? It's not a formerly incarcerated thing. It's not an out east versus out west thing. It's a black thing. We need opportunity, we need space, and we need support, and we need each other.
All right, real quick, because we only got a few minutes left, I want you to kind of, well, first let me ask you, any final thoughts, anything you want to get out before we wrap up?
So, just love the fact that I'm looking forward to how we can make this space more conversational. I love that we get to, talk about these issues because we're not talking about them collectively, as well as the people who are being paid to talk about them, who are elected to talk about them. They're talking about them without us. And so, these conversations, I'm hoping, is a reflection of my own experience and opinion, but I really hope that we can at least, not be ignorant enough to believe that how we believe and what we think and what we feel and what we know is the only way. And so it's important. All of us have a role to play. I'm not about to be at every city meeting in Gainesville, but if it's some people that has the patience, has the time, that can go to a city commission meeting and then be reporting to us, you know what I'm saying, letting us know. If there's somebody that got the time to follow our new sheriff and what's going on, if people, stop doing this and this and this, at least enough in this space where we can, have enough eyes. and ears and understanding to really not just know what the problems are, but what the solutions are. And I really tried to put as much resources on the website. Also, if you have resources that you want us to share, and not just criminal justice, right? Because again, people fall into criminal justice when they don't have opportunity to dance. Big shout outs to Shara. When people don't have opportunities to laugh, when people don't have a tie out that's going hard, you know what I'm saying, in the political paint, when people don't have like a voice box, like Shanae Baker on their side, when people don't have, support in the courtroom, when people don't have support in social services. So really looking forward to just being a more collective, voice, as well as space for people to learn, build relationships, and to be able to share with somebody what they're going through.
With that being said, can you shout out the Leah page again?
Yes.
And how people can donate, how people can access?
Absolutely. So you can donate as well as you can sign up as a volunteer, learn more about our services, or to schedule a one-on-one about your loved one or about a current case that you have going on. Go to Leah for Justice. That's all written out, no numbers, leahforjustice.com. Or you can check us out on Facebook at Justice for Florida. So look for Leah on Facebook. And if you're interested in tarot readings, birth charts, and for the emotional, spiritual life coaching, A Light Within the Valley is my new business. All right. So
shout out.
Justice. We got to take care of our inner self too.
I want to also, we're going to put all this on the both the station page and the Leah page, but I did want to just read off some resources and solutions and best practices for this last 40 seconds we got here. The Community Justice Initiative is a really good one. Beyond Legal Aid, which I'm not very familiar with. I'm sure that's pretty good.
Yes.
Participatory Defense. Amend Initiative, which I heard you mention earlier that I'd never heard of.
Restorative Justice Organization locally.
Nice.
Yes.
Community Spring.
Yes. If you live in Gainesville and do not know about Community Spring, or you're in Florida or all around the world and don't know about Community Spring, this is an organization that is employing community members to be community members, to, again, have the space, have the resources to define the problem, to build, solutions, build community. And so definitely check out Community Spring and the amazing work that they're doing and who they're doing it with.
And shout out to the next one is the Dream Defenders, which I knew the last organization, the last leader, which was Mr. Chad, but they have a new leadership now, right?
Yes, we miss you, Chad. And so we have Kathleen currently, and just a great, it's hard to even think of a leader because they work so
right.
Manu, Kathleen, Wallace, Mazon, my love, my boo, Kiera, they are holding it down over there.
Shout out to the Dream Defense. We're gonna put that link on the page as well. Alachua County Labor Coalition, is that the peak?
So no, that's Jeremiah's Hattersville.
Okay.
Does Sheila Payne, I'll never forget. The Labor Coalition became a partner fighting for voting rights.
Okay.
But they actually have tenants' rights and tenants' housing. They have different, departments, but they are helping with people that are having issues with tenants, landlords, as well as Grace Marketplace. Shares a lot of information. Right now it's tough times, and so another great resource.
The next one is the League of Women Voters. I hear you talk about it a lot, but I'm not very familiar with it.
Yes, and so a lot of times people just show up, right, in voting season, wanting us to vote, but voter education, voter empowerment, understanding how voting works, understanding, we talked a little bit today about the mayor, elected officials within the criminal justice sense, but our League of Women Voters is doing some amazing community-centered work, fighting against, juvenile issues inside the state of Florida, but they're also just an untapped resource for voter empowerment, as well as learning about politics, learning about government, and building coalition to fight back. So these are people that you can also partner with to address issues that are going on in your community. We don't have to wait for help. We are that help.
Talk a little bit about Project Youth Build.
So, traditional school is not for everybody, and that doesn't make our kids bad. Again, we got a lot of young people too that's not the safest place for them. Project Youth Build is an alternative school for at-risk youth between the ages of 16 and 24. Not only do they get their high school diploma, they get compensated for going to school, and they learn other skill sets, and they have social emotional learning. They get to get a diversity and introduction to HBCUs, college, and so it's also a place where you can volunteer. Go over there, volunteer your time, connect with our young people, but also applications for this year is open until February the 1st. So Project Youth Build, go on their website and you can just put that in. Google Project Youth Build Gainesville, Florida, and get that information, get that application printed. If you need one printed, let me know. We'll bring you one, and sign your youth up, see if your youth qualify. It could be a great opportunity for them to get their diploma, get out of the school system.
And lastly, Community Justice Initiative.
So the Community Justice Initiative is dear to my heart. I am no longer working with the River Phoenix Center for Peace Building, but that is an initiative that I started at RPCP. The police youth dialogues are still happening. Also, dialogues between youth and teachers. We have alternatives to the justice system like transformative practices, but we also have restorative justice, methods that include resolving conflict within the justice system. And so, again, being a part of the solution, check out the River Phoenix Center for Peace Building, volunteer, support the work that they're doing to grow more of these conversations, but making sure that they're diverse as well.
Cool. Well, hey, we will be back next Sunday. Thank you for the wealth of information that you partake. We got more shout outs, man. Miss Nikita Daniels again. She was very, very thankful for what you're doing, as well as Miss Lori Reisman. So shout out to her too.
Oh, Lori.
Yeah, Lori's very nice.
Yes.
So next week, we'll be doing it again, same time. Make sure you guys don't go nowhere. And stay tuned in. Any last words?
See you next week.
All right, y'all. Keep it locked, y'all.